Hey everybody, how we doing? I'm Craig and this is Spirit of Vinyl. Happy Friday. Hope you guys are all having a wonderful week. Let's see what we're drinking today. Hippies and Cowboys IPA from Tennessee Brew Works. Let's have ourselves a drink. Mike, I'm not trying to steal your thing, but it's Friday and it's a cheers time, so it's a good beer. So how is everything going, guys? Hope you guys are all doing well. Well, this week I want to talk about something. Like a month ago, I was watching Chris Profi, Musically Obsessed, and he was doing overlooked albums or albums that we hated beforehand, and he was talking about Peter Criss's solo album. So, those of you who don't know, in 1978, Kiss became the first band, technically, I guess, to all put out solo albums at the same time. So we have the 4 Kiss solo albums from September of 1978. So the world famous pictures and everything else. So he was talking and reviewing that, and that's an album I never liked when I was a kid. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give it another listen, and I decided I'd do a show. So today we're going to talk about the 1978 Kiss solo albums. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the one that brought me this idea, thanks to Chris, is thanks to Chris. Sorry, I got all confused there for a second. Peter Criss, 1978 solo album. There's your back cover. They all pretty much look the same. These ones are green. Paul's is purple. This one, I do not have the inner sleeve, but I still have the insert that it came with. And the record looks like that, and they all pretty much look the same. They're all in the Casablanca logo. They just have the pictures of the different members of each band on it. So Peter Criss's solo album, when it comes to Kiss, does not sound anything like you would expect Kiss to sound like. This is essentially sort of a soul R&B jazz type of album. You know, Peter Criss was basically a classic jazz type drummer anyway. Track listing: I'm Gonna Love You, You Matter to Me, Tossin' and Turnin', Don't Let Me Down, That's the Kind of Sugar Papa Likes. Side 2 has Easy Things, Rock Me Baby, Kiss the Girls Goodbye, Hooked on Rock and Roll, and I Can't Stop the Rain. Tossin' and Turnin' is a remake, old classic R&B song. So, what can I say about this record? I never liked this record when I was younger. Of course, you know, being a Kiss fan and then hearing this, it didn't sound like them at all. Wasn't my style of music. I never really cared for this record. In fact, when I played it, it almost sounds near mint. I've had it since I was probably 14 years old, you know, so I've had it for 40 plus years. And in that time, I probably listened to it less than a handful of times. And until this week, I listened to it twice in a row to really get a feel of what it is. And honestly, it's a good record. I got to tell you off the bat, Peter Criss, out of the original 4 members, he's one of my favorite singers out of the original 4. I love his songs on the early Kiss albums. I think his voice is great and everything else, and his voice is great on this. And songs like You Matter to Me is cool. His remake of Tossin' and Turnin' is cool. Overall, it's pretty good record. It's a little heavy with the keyboards and a little heavy on that whole R&B thing for me, but it's actually done really well, and he's got a really good voice. It's just not really a hard rock album, and overall, it's not necessarily my style. So, but it's not terrible. I know looking back on it, people would tell you it was terrible, especially when it first came out. It did not do well sales-wise. Over time, they've all sold over 1 million copies. So, but to me, this is the softest record and the one that least sounds like Kiss. So, next up, let's talk about Paul Stanley's record. Paul Stanley's record is the one that sounds the most like Kiss. Honestly, it really does. When you let's see, here's the track listing on the back. Tonight You Belong to Me, Move On, Ain't Quite Right, Wouldn't You Like to Know Me, Take Me Away, Together as One, It's Alright, Hold Me, Touch Me, Love in Chains, and Goodbye. He has plenty of people helping him out on that. The Peter Criss album, basically, go back to Peter Criss for a second. There's like 3 other people on here. Basically, he just had a whole new band. Where Paul, has Bob Kulick and let's see who else is on here. Carmine Appice is on here. Craig Cramp, Eric Nelson, Steve Lacy. So Paul's album sounds more like Kiss than any of the other 4, honestly. You can really hear, especially you can hear what Kiss is going to become in the mid-'80s. You can hear that sound in this record. It sounds like a classic Kiss record. It really does. Tonight You Belong to Me, Move On, Ain't Quite Right. That's the first 3 songs on the album. Those are all really good records. Honestly, when I was younger, I didn't really care for this one that much more than any of the other ones, even though, like I said, it sounds more like Kiss than any of them. I don't know if you can hear that. My dogs are out there losing their mind. Hopefully we don't get interrupted. So with Paul, it sounds more like Kiss than anything else. And it's actually very good, but it's got a couple of, Hold Me, Touch Me, and Wouldn't You Like to Know Me, these kind of weak ballady type songs. But like I said, when you hear it, the way the guitar works and his singing style, you can hear what Kiss is going to become in the 80s, especially in that era where Gene is kind of checked out of the band. Of course, Ace and Peter had left by then, and it's basically just Paul's band at that time. And he's just, he's the one writing all the songs. You can hear that when you listen to Crazy Nights and Asylum and that it's mostly Paul. And you can hear that sound in this record. Overall, I like this one. It's pretty good. Not one of my favorites. It never has been. But like I said, it sounds most like Kiss than any other ones. All right, next. Gene Simmons. All right, Gene's album starts off with Radioactive, Burn Up with Fever, See You Tonight, Tunnel of Love, True Confessions, Living in Sin, Always Near You, Man of a Thousand Faces, Mr. Make-Believe, See You in Your Dreams, and When You Wish Upon a Star, which is exactly what it is. It's the remake of the old Disney song. Now, Gene has the biggest group of musicians helping him out with this. Bob Seger's on here, Joe Perry, Helen Reddy, Jeff Skunk Baxter, Donna Summer, Jamis Ian, Rick Nelson, Cher, Mitch Weisman, Michael DeBars, and on and on. He's got the who's who of 1970s music helping him out on this record. And I really like this album. I always have. I think in the beginning, when I was just a little kid, when I'm 13 years old or whatever, and I got this record, it's the cover. The cover is awesome, the little bit of blood and everything else, and Gene just looks so evil and demonic, and it kind of turned me on to it. And then listen to it. Radioactive starts off with like a little devilish chant and so on, but it's very cool. It's got a little bit of soul kind of sound to it, very like catchy type stuff. Lots of, it's got a couple, Man of a Thousand Faces, Mr. Make-Believer, a couple of ballads. Of course, When You Wish Upon a Star is a straight up remake of the Disney song. But songs like Radioactive, Burn Up with Fever, Tunnel of Love, True Confessions, Living in Sin. And then he does See You in Your Dreams, which is technically a remake of a Kiss song. And it adds a little bit more funk and more bass to it. And it kind of changes the song a little bit. But overall, this is a very good record. I really like it. It's got a little bit of funky sound to it. It's definitely purely rock and roll. I like this one a lot. And this one, like I said, the records all kind of look the same, but I did have the inner sleeve with a couple of these. This is what the inner sleeve looks like on those. They're all the same. I do not have the posters anymore. I used to have all 4 posters. They made like a puzzle you could interconnect and hang on your wall, and it was, 24 inches high and, I don't know, about, 1, 2, 24, 4, I don't know. It was big. All right, anyway. Moving on to Ace Frehley. This is my favorite of the 4. Always has been, always will be. I didn't even really have to listen to this week, although I did in order to give it a review because this album is in heavy rotation and has been since I was a teenager. Rip It Out, Speeding Back to My Baby, Snowblind, Ozone, What's on Your Mind, New York Groove, I'm in Need of Love, Wiped Out, and Fractured Mirror. This album is guitar heavy all the way through and through. And I feel like this album is also the most solo of the 4 solo albums because Ace plays everything on here except for drums. And let's see, there's one more that he does not. Will Lee plays bass on Ozone and Wiped Out and I'm in Need of Love. Besides that, Ace plays the bass, he plays the guitar, he plays the rhythm, the lead guitar, he plays the bass, he sings all the lyrics, of course. They all sing all their own. And then he's got Anton Fig on the drums, and that's pretty much it. So to me, this is the most solo of the solo albums because it's truly just Ace doing everything except for playing the drums. I love this record. This is guitar heavy. This is good rock and roll. It doesn't sound like Kiss, really, not as much as like Paul's does. And Gene's doesn't sound like Kiss at all, and neither does Peter's. This one is definitely more guitar heavy than Kiss was. It's more straight up rock and roll. That's a lot heavier than anything Kiss was doing in the 70s, honestly. And I think this is a great record, and I recommend this to anybody who, if you're going to pick one of the 4, pick this one. So those are my little thoughts on these records. Now, Chris Brophy was talking about Peter Criss and the Peter Criss record, and I do agree. It's actually a better record than I remember. The Paul Stanley album, like I said, sounds most like Kiss. The Gene album I like. It's funky, it's cool, it's kind of evil sounding at times. And Aces is just straight up rock and roll, guitar-driven rock and roll. If I had to rank them, Aces number 1 for me, for sure. And Peter's is going to be last just because it's the style of music and it's not my style. That jazzy R&B sound isn't something that I really traditionally go for. But I don't hate it, which I used to. I used to just hate it. Like, oh, this album is just terrible. That's why it's basically in mint condition other than the cover. But Ace's album, I could listen to over and over. I could stream it. I mean, it just gets played. It's in constant rotation. The Paul album, I don't know why I never really got into that because it does sound more like Kiss than anything else. And I think it's really good other than the couple of ballads are a little ballady. And like I said, when I was listening to it this week, I was getting that early 80s Kiss vibe, getting that 70s stuff. If you listen to like Killers, which is, which not everybody has, there's a couple of songs on there. You can hear that sound in the Paul Stanley solo album. You can hear that same sound that was on those new tracks on the Killers album. And you can hear some of that in The Elder. And then more of that style came in the 80s. So I don't know why I don't listen to the Paul album more often. The Gene album has always been in heavy rotation throughout my life, and so is the Ace. Those two were always the top 2. So I'd still have to kind of rank them the same way, although Paul's might, kind of even out with Gene as time goes on, the more I listen to these records. I don't know if Peter's will ever get up there, and none of them will be as good as Ace's. So anyway, that's my feeling on the 4 solo albums. I'll just show you the inner sleeves to give you the covers of all of them. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys have these records and if you listen to them, which one you think is the best one, which one's your favorite, which one you think has the best musicianship. Honestly, when it comes to musicianship, it's really hard to pick which one has the best musicianship on it. Maybe Aces because he does play the bass and the lead and the rhythm guitar and does all the singing on it. Maybe that one's more than anything else compared to, the funny thing about the Gene Simmons album is he does not play bass on that record. He has other bass players playing the bass. He is playing guitar on that record. So, that would see how that goes. But overall, I think they're all 4 really good records. They all 4 did go platinum, although it took a while. They say the problem with them, they put them out in sales, they put them all out in the same day, and your average Kiss fan was a teenager who didn't have money to buy 4 records, so you had to pick which one you wanted. And a lot of people went with their favorite artist in the band, and that's the one that sold the most. But originally, Aces sold the most, and in the long term, I'm assuming his has still sold the most. They all went platinum. Ace is also the only one out of the 4 to have a radio hit with New York Groove, which is, I guess, still played in Giants games and things. It's still kind of a New York staple. So anyway, that's my thoughts. You guys let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you all, and we'll talk to you all next week.